Imagine spending your entire life performing, not on a stage, but in the quiet theater of everyday life. Every word you speak, every decision you make, every expression you wear becomes a silent audition for acceptance. You measure your worth through the eyes of others, not realizing you've built a life out of mirrors instead of substance. It starts early. You learn that being loved means being good, that approval equals safety. You adapt. You become what's expected. You chase smiles, nods, the soft applause of belonging. You learn to shape your personality the way a sculptor shapes clay, carefully, anxiously, afraid that one wrong move will make someone lose interest. And somewhere along the way you forget what your own shape was supposed to be. You dress for perception. You speak for approval. You work for recognition. You live for validation. Each choice becomes a question. Will they like this? Will they approve? Will they still want me if I don't? The world rewards this kind of obedience. It calls it success, professionalism, social intelligence. But underneath it all is a quiet panic, the fear of not being enough. The result is a strange kind of imprisonment. The walls aren't made of stone, but of opinions. You can't see them, yet you feel them closing in every time you hesitate to speak honestly, every time you suppress your real thoughts to keep the peace. You become a ghost, visible, functioning, smiling, but hollow. The tragedy is that most people never realize they're trapped. They call it ambition, responsibility, maturity, but what they've really learned is how to disappear behind roles: the student, the employee, the friend, the parent, the good person. Montaigne saw this centuries ago. He lived in a world obsessed with hierarchy, reputation, and social decorum, a world not so different from ours. Yet while others sought titles and praise, he turned inward. He asked a question that almost no one dared to ask. What happens when we stop performing? What happens when you stop trying to be what others expect and simply become yourself? Unfiltered, unapproved, unguarded. Most people never find out because they're too afraid to disappoint. We have built entire lives around avoiding that feeling, the sting of being misunderstood, of not fitting in, of standing alone. But the irony is cruel. In trying to be accepted by everyone, you end up known by no one, not even yourself. The prison of approval has no guards, only habits. You walk its corridors willingly. You decorate the walls with other people's expectations. You call it safety, but it's really surrender. And yet, somewhere deep down behind the noise of obligation, something resists. A quiet voice that says, there must be more than this. That voice is the beginning of freedom. It doesn't shout. It doesn't demand. It simply asks, what if I stopped caring so much? That question, small, defiant, revolutionary, is where this journey begins. Because the moment you ask it, the walls of that invisible prison start to tremble. Everywhere you look, the world tells you to take control. Control your time, your habits, your emotions, your image. Control your future. Control your outcomes. Control your life. It sounds empowering until you realize how heavy that word really is. Control begins as a form of protection. It gives us the illusion that if we plan carefully enough, worry deeply enough, and work endlessly enough, we can shield ourselves from chaos. It promises safety. But what it really delivers is exhaustion. Because life does not bend to control, it breaks it. Think of how often you try to force things into place. The perfect career path, the flawless relationship, the neatly ordered plan for the next 10 years. You grip tighter and tighter, believing that discipline alone can outsmart uncertainty. But life, indifferent and vast, simply shrugs and changes course. And each time it does, you feel it. That sharp sting of disappointment. The frustration of watching something slip through your fingers despite all your effort. You call it failure, but it's not failure. It's friction between illusion and reality. Michel de Montaigne saw this centuries ago. He noticed how people, terrified of life's unpredictability, try to build cages of logic and routine, as if order could protect them from fate. But he also saw how those cages became prisons, how the attempt to control every outcome slowly strangles the joy of living. We do not suffer because life is chaotic. We suffer because we expect it not to be. Control feels powerful, but underneath it lies fear. Fear of uncertainty, fear of imperfection, fear of losing the image we've constructed. The mind whispers, "If I can just keep everything in line, I'll finally be safe." But life was never meant to be kept in line, it's meant to be experienced. Perfectionism, that quiet poison, grows from the same soil. We polish every corner of ourselves, afraid of showing the cracks. We call it self-improvement, but often it's self-erasure. Because perfection is not growth, it's denial of reality. Montaigne dared to reject that denial. He wrote openly about his flaws, his fears, his contradictions. He refused to pretend that wisdom meant control. Instead, he said, "My imperfections do not lessen me, they complete me." He understood something we still struggle to grasp, that to live freely is to surrender gracefully, to allow life to move as it will, unpredictable, wild, unscripted, and to find peace within that motion. But the modern world resists this truth. It tells you to manifest, to optimize, to take charge. It glorifies the myth that control equals success. Yet, look closely, the people most obsessed with control are often the most anxious, because the more you try to hold everything together, the more fragile you become. Letting go feels dangerous at first. It feels like stepping into emptiness. But slowly you realize it's not emptiness, it's space. Space to breathe, space to be imperfect, space to let life happen without believing it's a threat. Control is heavy, freedom is light, and freedom begins the moment you stop mistaking control for strength. Montaigne didn't preach chaos, he preached balance. He believed that wisdom was knowing what deserves effort and what deserves release. You plant seeds, but you do not command them to grow. You steer the ship, but you do not control the sea. To live this way is not to give up, it's to wake up, to stop fighting the tide and start floating with it. And in that quiet surrender, something extraordinary happens. You begin to feel at peace, not because life has become predictable, but because you no longer need it to be. There are thinkers who shape the world by conquering it, by building empires, commanding armies, and bending others to their will. And then there are the rarer ones who shape it by stepping away, by looking inward instead of outward, by daring to question not the world but the self. Michel de Montaigne was one of them. He lived during the 16th century, a time of turmoil, of plagues and wars, of religious zeal and intellectual arrogance. Everyone seemed to be shouting what was right, what was true, what was sacred. And in the midst of that noise, Montaigne did something quietly rebellious. He walked away. He retired early from public life, from politics, debates, reputation, and retreated to a small stone tower on his family estate in France. There, in a circular room lined with thousands of books, he began his great experiment, to study not the heavens, not the state, not theology, but himself. He called his work essays, from the French word meaning attempts. Because that's all they were, attempts to understand the contradictions and chaos of being human. He did not write as a preacher or a philosopher. He wrote as a man trying to make peace with his own confusion. "I am myself the matter of my book," he declared, a sentence that would echo through centuries of literature and psychology. At a time when others sought perfection, Montaigne confessed his flaws. When others claimed certainty, he admitted doubt. While his peers tried to appear wise, he preferred to appear honest. He wrote about fear, laziness, vanity, friendship, death, even bowel movements. Not because these subjects were noble, but because they were real. He believed that nothing human was beneath examination, that wisdom grows not from pretending to be ideal, but from understanding what we truly are. This was heresy to his age, and yet it was the seed of modern thought. Because long before psychology gave us terms like self-awareness or authenticity, Montaigne lived them. He saw that people were enslaved not by external forces, but by their own minds, by the endless need to appear a certain way, to prove, to perform, to please. He once wrote, "We are, I know not how, double in ourselves, so that what we believe, we disbelieve, and cannot rid ourselves of what we condemn." In that line lies his genius, the recognition that humans are contradictions made flesh. We want peace, yet seek drama. We long for freedom, yet build prisons of control. We crave authenticity, yet wear masks for love. Montaigne did not try to fix this paradox. He accepted it, and in doing so he became one of the first to find freedom within imperfection. His tower became his laboratory, not of science but of the soul. He spent hours reading, reflecting, walking in circles, and writing what he observed about himself and the world. He studied his thoughts the way a scientist studies the stars, patiently, without judgment. And what he discovered was both simple and profound, that the more you try to control life, the less of it you truly experience. The more you chase perfection, the further you drift from peace. He saw how people destroy their happiness by trying to control what others think of them, how reputation becomes a noose around the neck. He wrote, "If you are praised, you must deserve it. If you are blamed, you must bear it. But neither should rule your peace." It was a radical idea, that you could be content without anyone's approval, that you could live quietly, honestly, without needing to prove your worth to the world. And he didn't mean this as a retreat from life. He wasn't advocating isolation or apathy. He believed in laughter, friendship, wine, conversation. He enjoyed the physical world, but without the obsession of ownership. He believed in enough, in balance, in living as a flawed creature among flawed creatures. He dared to suggest that wisdom is not found in books or sermons, but in how we respond to our own thoughts when no one is watching. And perhaps most importantly, he redefined what it means to think. Before Montaigne, thinking was something done to conquer the world, to build, to prove, to dominate. After Montaigne, thinking became a way to understand the self. He transformed philosophy from a weapon into a mirror. That mirror, centuries later, still stands, quiet and waiting. Every time you pause to question your own thoughts, instead of rushing to judge someone else's, every time you allow yourself to be imperfect without shame, every time you stop performing long enough to be genuine, you are, without realizing it, standing in Montaigne's tower. He built no monuments, fought no wars, ruled no nation, and yet his words outlived them all. Because while empires crumble, self-understanding endures. And Montaigne, centuries ahead of his time, left us a map, not to success, not to control, but to freedom. The quiet, humble, unshakable freedom of simply being who you are. When the noise fades and you are finally alone with your thoughts, what do you see? Most people don't know, because they rarely look. They fill every silence with sound, every pause with distraction, every doubt with reassurance. But Montaigne, centuries ago, stood still before the mirror of his own mind and refused to turn away. He understood something few dare to face, that the hardest person to spend time with is yourself. The human mind, when stripped of noise and approval, is not peaceful at first. It is wild. It chatters, argues, replays memories, invents scenarios. It reminds you of every mistake, every flaw, every failure. It whispers the things you've avoided hearing. And that is why most people run from solitude, because silence doesn't just surround you, it confronts you. Montaigne didn't run. He listened. He realized that true wisdom begins not in reading or debate, but in self-observation. He wrote, "The greatest thing in the world is to know how to belong to oneself." It sounds simple, but it's revolutionary. Because to belong to yourself means to stop outsourcing your identity. It means not needing the constant echo of validation to confirm that you exist. Look at the modern world. Every post, every selfie, every opinion broadcast to strangers, and you'll see how terrified we are of that mirror. We are constantly performing, shaping our lives to be seen, afraid that if we stop, we'll disappear. But Montaigne knew the truth. We don't disappear when we stop performing. We reappear. When you are alone long enough, you begin to notice something beneath all the noise. A quiet presence that does not need approval, that does not compete, that simply is. It's not glamorous, it's not loud, but it's real. He believed that solitude was not loneliness, it was clarity. It was a way to step outside the endless theater of comparison and see yourself without costume. To ask, what do I truly think? What do I actually feel? Not what have I been told to think or feel. But this kind of reflection demands courage, because when you strip away the layers, you find that much of what you thought was you isn't yours at all. Your ambitions, your standards, your fears, they belong to the world that raised you. You were told what success looks like, what happiness means, what kind of person you should be. And in chasing those borrowed ideas, you became a stranger to your own life. Montaigne's solitude was not escape. It was recovery. He withdrew not to abandon the world, but to stop letting it define him. He turned his gaze inward, like a diver descending into dark waters, unsure what he'd find, but knowing that truth lived there, not on the surface. He observed his moods, his habits, his impulses. He wrote about jealousy, about sadness, about vanity, not to judge them, but to understand them, because he believed that the only way to master your thoughts is first to witness them, and that witnessing, that quiet, non-judgmental awareness, is what we've lost today. We are experts at knowing what others think, but strangers to our own thinking. We analyze everyone's behavior, but rarely question our own. We can describe the world in detail, but cannot describe ourselves. Montaigne would call this a tragedy, the disappearance of inner conversation, because without self-awareness, there can be no peace. A person who does not know their own mind becomes a puppet of circumstance, pulled by trends, fears, and other people's emotions. But when you begin to know yourself, when you face that inner mirror without running, something shifts. You become less reactive. You stop being tossed by every opinion. You stop needing constant reassurance. You learn to sit with your own company and find that it is enough. The mirror of the self is not meant to flatter you, it's meant to free you. It shows you both your shadows and your light, your pettiness, your kindness, your contradictions. But once you see them clearly, they stop controlling you. That's the quiet power Montaigne discovered in solitude, the kind that doesn't shout or seek attention, but glows quietly from within. Because when you finally know yourself, you no longer chase mirrors. You become one, a calm, reflective surface, untouched by noise yet open to the light. There comes a point in every life when the weight becomes too heavy, the constant need to be understood, to be admired, to be right. You spend years building the perfect version of yourself, and then one day you realize that the more perfect you try to become, the less alive you feel. Montaigne knew that moment well. He called it the quiet collapse of illusion. The day you understand that control is an endless struggle, and that no matter how hard you hold on, life will always find a way to undo your plans. To him, this wasn't tragedy, it was freedom. Letting go, he believed, was not defeat, it was intelligence. Because wisdom is not about mastering everything, but about knowing what cannot be mastered. He once wrote, "He who establishes his argument by noise and command shows that his reason is weak." What he meant was simple. The more you fight life, the less you understand it. The moment you stop clinging to success, to perfection, to reputation, you begin to live from truth instead of fear. Think about it. How much of your energy each day is spent trying to control things that were never yours to control? People's opinions, how others behave, the outcome of plans, the passage of time. We worry, predict, analyze, and calculate. But still, life happens in its own rhythm. Montaigne noticed that even the wisest people live like anxious gods, terrified of what they cannot govern. Yet the only true power, he said, lies in acceptance. Acceptance doesn't mean passivity. It doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop suffering over what you can't command. It means doing what's within your reach and letting the rest unfold. This was not a philosophy of laziness. Montaigne worked, loved, grieved, and lived fully, but he did it without the fever of control. When faced with uncertainty, he leaned into it. When life disappointed him, he learned instead of resisting. He understood that the mind clings to control not because it's logical, but because it's afraid. To let go feels like dying, like giving up the illusion that we're in charge. But what really dies is the tension that keeps us small. When you stop trying to control life, something remarkable happens. You begin to participate in it. You start noticing the details, the way a leaf trembles in the wind, the rhythm of footsteps on a quiet street, the feeling of your own breath. The world becomes alive again, not because it changed, but because you stopped fighting it. This is the paradox Montaigne returned to again and again. The less you care about outcomes, the better they become. Because calm decisions are wiser than fearful ones. Because people trust those who are not desperate for approval. Because when you release your grip, the right things finally have space to arrive. He wrote, "To compose our character is our duty, not to compose books, and to win not battles and provinces, but order and tranquility in our conduct." That was his entire philosophy, that your real work in life is not to conquer the world, but to bring peace to the war inside your own mind. And you cannot do that by clinging, you can only do it by loosening. Every act of letting go and of resentment, of fear, of control, is a quiet declaration of trust, that the world will keep spinning, that life knows what it's doing even when you don't. The great mistake of modern life is believing that power means control. But the deeper truth is that power comes from ease, from the ability to act without being ruled by fear. Montaigne's lesson was not to stop caring about life, but to stop caring about everything that steals life's joy. He understood that freedom begins not with adding more, but with removing what weighs you down. And when you do that, when you release what no longer serves you, the silence that follows is not empty, it's full of clarity, full of breath, full of the quiet strength that comes from finally being unburdened. That is the power of letting go. Not the absence of effort, but the presence of peace. Not apathy, but wisdom. Not escape, but freedom. And once you've felt it, even for a moment, you never want to go back. There is a common misunderstanding in the modern world, the belief that to stop caring means to stop feeling, that detachment equals coldness, or that serenity means isolation. But Montaigne saw it differently. To him, detachment was not about shutting the world out. It was about seeing it clearly. He understood that you could love deeply, work passionately, and still remain free from obsession. You could be fully alive without being consumed. He believed that the key to wisdom was not withdrawal, but perspective, the ability to stand in the middle of chaos and remain untouched by its madness. Detachment, he wrote, was a discipline of balance. It meant being present in the world but not enslaved by it, to engage without clinging, to act without anxiety, to care without collapsing under the weight of care. In our age, this sounds impossible. We are taught that passion must mean attachment, that to prove love or ambition, you must suffer for it. We glorify burnout as dedication, jealousy as romance, stress as productivity. But all of this, Montaigne would say, is confusion, because love and purpose lose their beauty when they turn into chains. He once observed that fortune does us neither good nor ill, she only offers us the seed and the soil. What grows depends on how we cultivate it, not how much we cling. Think of your own life. How often do you overthink what you can't change? How many nights have you lost to replaying conversations, worrying about opinions, chasing the impossible? Detachment is the art of stepping back from that mental storm, not because you don't care, but because you care too much to let it destroy your peace. It's the quiet ability to say, I will give my best, but I will not lose myself in the result. To love someone deeply, for example, does not mean to control them. It means to allow them to be free, to love without possession. To pursue success does not mean to fear failure. It means to act from purpose, not panic. To be kind does not mean to please everyone. It means to act with integrity, not for applause. This was Montaigne's subtle wisdom, that detachment is not emotional numbness, but emotional maturity. It's not that you feel less, it's that you understand your feelings are not commands. They are weather, passing, changing, revealing what's beneath. And beneath it all there is something steady, a stillness untouched by fortune or failure. That is what he sought to live from. Montaigne practiced detachment even in his own writing. He was never desperate to be understood or praised. He simply wrote what was true and let it go. His essays were confessions, not performances. And because he didn't write for approval, his words carried honesty that has survived centuries. He knew that truth spoken without attachment has a strange power. It endures. This kind of detachment is rare today. Most of us live in a constant tug of expectation, reacting, defending, over-explaining. But Montaigne's lesson invites us to step back and ask, what happens if I stop trying to control how everything turns out? The answer is not apathy. The answer is clarity. When you stop trying to manipulate life, you start participating in it. When you stop demanding certainty, you begin to discover meaning. When you stop chasing validation, you find authenticity. It is easy to mistake detachment for indifference. But true detachment is love purified of fear. It's ambition freed from anxiety. It's empathy without exhaustion. To live this way is not to drift away from the world. It is us to finally meet it as it is, not as you need it to be. That is why Montaigne's philosophy feels so alive even now, because it is not about escape, but about presence. To stand in the storm and remain calm, to act, love, create, and speak, not from need but from wholeness. And in that balance, the soul finds something that no amount of approval or control can ever give it, peace that lasts. Montaigne lived in a time obsessed with order. Scholars pursued flawless logic. Rulers sought flawless rule. The church demanded flawless faith. Yet he, sitting alone in his tower, saw through it all. He realized that the relentless pursuit of perfection was not a mark of strength but of fear. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of being seen as merely human. So he made a radical choice for his time. He stopped pretending to be perfect. I speak the truth not as much as I would, but as much as I dare, he wrote, and I dare a little more as I grow older. That sentence, quiet and humble, contains a revolution. Because what Montaigne understood, long before psychology or philosophy caught up, was that our obsession with flawlessness is what makes us miserable. He admitted to cowardice, to vanity, to laziness. He confessed that he forgot what he read, that he contradicted himself, that he was inconsistent. Instead of hiding these faults, he studied them. He believed that imperfection was not an obstacle to wisdom, but its doorway. Think about how rare that attitude is today. We polish our images online until they shine. We curate our lives to look like stories worth admiring. We pretend to have answers because saying "I don't know" feels like weakness. But Montaigne knew that uncertainty was not weakness, it was honesty. He wrote, "I'm an ordinary man who has spent more time studying himself than any other subject." He saw that self-acceptance begins when we stop trying to meet imaginary standards. Perfection, he said, is not just impossible, it's unnatural. Look at nature itself. No tree grows in a straight line, no river flows perfectly smooth. The beauty of the world lies in its asymmetry, its accidents, its unpredictability. Why should human beings be any different? But the world still teaches us to fear mistakes. From childhood we learn to hide them, to fix them, to deny them. We equate failure with shame and shame with unworthiness. So we live cautiously, avoiding risk, not because we don't want to live fully, but because we're terrified of being seen as imperfect. Montaigne saw this fear everywhere. He noticed that people tried to appear more virtuous than they were, more consistent, more certain, more confident. But behind every act of false perfection, he saw suffering. He believed that this constant self-polishing was the reason people grew bitter and anxious, because no one can breathe inside a mask. His antidote was simple: stop polishing. To him, the good life wasn't about conquering weakness, but understanding it. You cannot build wisdom by denying what you are. You can only build it by being honest about what you find inside. He used himself as an experiment. Whenever he noticed a contradiction, instead of condemning it, he explored it. He would say, "I find myself continually changing." And instead of seeing that as a flaw, he saw it as proof that he was alive. This is the heart of his philosophy, that to be human is to be incomplete, that wisdom is not a fixed state but a dance with uncertainty. And when you finally stop fighting that truth, something miraculous happens. The weight lifts. You stop comparing yourself to everyone else. You stop fearing small mistakes. You stop chasing the illusion of being enough because you realize you always were. Imperfection becomes not something to fix, but something to honor, a reminder that you are part of nature, not above it, that you belong here, not as a flawless idea, but as a living, learning, flawed, breathing being. Montaigne's writings glow with this gentleness. They are not sermons or lessons. They are confessions written with warmth. They remind us that acceptance is not resignation, it's reconciliation. To make peace with your imperfection is to stop waging war against your own nature. And in that peace you find a strange kind of freedom. The freedom to be yourself, unpolished, inconsistent, real. The freedom to fail without collapsing. The freedom to laugh at your mistakes and move on. Because when you stop demanding perfection from yourself, you also stop demanding it from others. And then, almost without trying, life starts to feel lighter and love starts to feel easier. Montaigne's secret wasn't that he found perfection, it's that he stopped needing to. And in that moment he became whole. Montaigne believed that the truest test of wisdom was not how we think in solitude, but how we live among others. It's easy to appear calm when you're alone in a tower. Much harder when the world presses against you with its noise, its demands, its expectations. He saw that most human suffering does not come from isolation, but from entanglement, from our need to shape, fix, and control the people around us. We crave connection, but we mistake it for possession. We call it love, but often it's fear in disguise. Fear of losing, fear of being forgotten, fear of not mattering. And so we cling. We try to change others, to make them fit the image that brings us comfort. We call it guidance or care or protection, but what it really is control. Montaigne refused that illusion. He wrote, "If you press people too hard, they grow stubborn. If you let them be, they grow free." He understood that the more you try to own another person's will, the more you lose your own peace. In friendship, he sought not dependence but understanding. He said that true companionship is not built on sameness but on freedom. Two people standing side by side, not tangled together. In love, he believed the same, that affection must never become ownership. And in all relationships, he practiced one quiet rule: let others be. This may sound simple, but it's revolutionary. Because to truly let someone be themselves, you must first let go of the part of you that wants to control them. The anxious, ego-driven part that says, they should act like this. They should think like me. They should understand me perfectly. We suffer because we want people to act according to our script, but life doesn't follow our script, and neither do people. Think of how many arguments come not from cruelty, but from expectation. How much disappointment is born not from what others did, but from what we believed they should do. Montaigne learned this the hard way, through politics, family, and loss. He saw how fragile human bonds became when they were bound by demand. So he chose instead to approach people with curiosity, not to fix, but to understand. He discovered that the less you demand from others, the more freely they give. That people open up not when you control them, but when they feel safe to exist as they are. This is the secret of every deep relationship. The paradox that closeness grows from distance, that love deepens when you stop trying to manage it. But this doesn't mean detachment from people. Montaigne loved profoundly, especially his closest friend Etienne de la Boétie, whose early death left him shattered. Yet even through that grief, he wrote not about possession, but about gratitude. He said that true love is a warmth that burns quietly, not one that consumes. In our age, we confuse intensity with meaning. We think the louder, the closer, the more constant, the better. But what Montaigne reminds us is that peace and depth live in space. Love breathes in the room between two souls, not in their fusion. He invites us to imagine relationships not as cages, but as gardens, where each person grows freely under the same sun, rooted in mutual respect, not control. This doesn't mean people won't hurt or disappoint you. They will. But when you stop trying to control them, their flaws stop feeling like betrayals. They simply become part of the human landscape. You begin to love more calmly, more maturely, without the constant ache of fear. And this shift changes everything. You stop chasing attention and start cherishing presence. You stop demanding perfection and start finding beauty in imperfection. You stop over-explaining and start listening. Montaigne would say that in love and friendship alike, our task is not to bind others, but to understand ourselves. Because the way you love others mirrors the way you love your own soul. If you cannot accept yourself, you will always try to reshape others. But if you can be gentle with your own humanity, if you can look at your faults and still breathe easily, then suddenly you can do the same for everyone else. That's what Montaigne practiced: compassion without control, not indifference, not withdrawal, but respect. The kind of respect that allows every person, including you, to simply be. Because love that must be controlled is not love, but love that allows freedom, that forgives, releases, and accepts, is the only kind that endures. And once you taste that kind of peace, you will never again mistake possession for connection. If there was one truth Montaigne returned to again and again, it was this: life cannot be tamed. No philosophy, no faith, no wealth, no system can ever protect you from the unknown. And yet, he observed, nearly everyone lives as if it could, endlessly planning, preparing, worrying, as though the right amount of effort could make the world safe. But the world is never safe. It's alive, and that, to Montaigne, was its beauty. He wrote, "My life has been full of terrible misfortunes, most of which never happened." It's a line that carries both wit and wisdom, the awareness that most of our suffering doesn't come from reality, but from our attempts to control it. He saw that human beings live in a kind of illusion, a desperate attempt to predict what cannot be predicted. We want certainty because uncertainty feels like chaos. Yet in that pursuit, we lose the very thing that makes life meaningful: spontaneity. Montaigne proposed another way, not to fight uncertainty, but to dance with it. A dancer doesn't argue with the rhythm. They don't demand that the music change, they listen. They move with what's there. And if the song shifts, they shift too. That, he believed, is how one must live. He wrote during a time when war could erupt overnight, when plague could sweep through cities without warning. He knew that certainty was an illusion, but instead of despair, he found peace in acceptance. The unpredictability of life didn't make it meaningless, it made it precious. To him, every day was a gift, precisely because it could vanish. Every breath was enough because the next was never promised. Contrast that with the modern world, where everything is calculated, forecasted, and optimized, yet anxiety is at its peak. We live surrounded by control mechanisms, yet we've never been more afraid of uncertainty. We treat unpredictability like an enemy, but Montaigne would call it our greatest teacher. He saw that only through uncertainty do we learn patience. Only through loss do we learn to cherish. Only through impermanence do we learn to truly live. To accept uncertainty, then, is not resignation. It's wisdom. It means recognizing that the ground beneath you will always shift, and dancing anyway. This is not easy. The mind craves patterns, answers, guarantees. It wants to lock the future in place and call it peace. But Montaigne teaches that real peace isn't control, it's trust. Trust that even if the path changes, you can adapt. That even if you fall, you can rise. He often compared the human mind to a ship at sea. The waves of fortune will always come, but if your hand on the tiller is calm, you can navigate through any storm. You cannot calm the sea, but you can learn how to steer. And that is what it means to dance with uncertainty. Not to expect calm waters, but to move with grace through whatever arises. He found freedom in this flow. He saw that by releasing his grip on what he couldn't control, health, fate, others' opinions, he gained something far greater: resilience. Because the person who can endure uncertainty without panic is unshakable. The world may turn upside down, but they remain steady. Not because they are certain of the outcome, but because they are certain of themselves. In this way, Montaigne's philosophy becomes more than just thought. It becomes a rhythm, a way of living lightly in a heavy world. He would say, don't wait for life to be perfect before you enjoy it. Don't demand that it make sense before you participate in it. Let it surprise you, confuse you, change you. That is what it's meant to do. Because in the end, life is not a puzzle to be solved, but a melody to be lived. One note at a time, uncertain and beautiful. The mind wants control. The heart wants connection. But the soul wants movement. And in the quiet balance between fear and faith, between control and surrender, that's where Montaigne found it, the art of being alive. At the end of his life, after years of reflection and solitude, Montaigne arrived at a conclusion so simple that most people overlook it, and so profound that it still feels radical today. Freedom, he realized, is not the ability to do whatever you want. It is the peace of no longer needing to prove anything. He had spent his youth surrounded by noise, ambition, politics, reputation, intellectual battles. He had seen men destroy themselves chasing approval, and others grow bitter when fortune changed its face. He had known sickness, grief, loss, and the endless fragility of human plans. But through all of it, he discovered one quiet truth. You do not conquer life by fighting it. You find freedom by accepting it. He wrote, I want death to find me planting my cabbages, but caring nothing for it, and still less for my imperfect garden. That sentence is the essence of Montaigne, the gentle defiance of a man who found contentment in imperfection. He no longer needed to prove his worth, because he had already made peace with being human. And that's the freedom most people spend their lives missing. We think freedom is wealth, or power, or independence. But Montaigne understood it differently. True freedom is internal. It is the ability to remain steady in a world that constantly demands reaction. It's the refusal to let fear dictate your choices or validation define your value. He had learned that when you stop chasing approval, your actions become honest. When you stop fearing failure, your courage returns. When you stop trying to control every outcome, life begins to unfold as it should. You start to live instead of performing. You start to love without demanding. You start to work without exhaustion, because freedom isn't about escape, it's about presence. Montaigne once described his mind as a garden where the weeds grow as freely as the flowers. He didn't mean that he stopped caring. He meant that he stopped condemning. He stopped dividing his experience into good and bad, success and failure, right and wrong. He began to see that every contradiction, every uncertainty, every imperfection was part of the same living whole. And that's where peace begins, not in perfection, but in wholeness. The modern world promises happiness through mastery. Master your body, your career, your emotions, your future. But mastery without surrender only multiplies anxiety. Montaigne's gift to us is the opposite, to remind us that peace begins the moment we stop trying to be more than human. He invites us to imagine a different kind of strength, one that doesn't roar, but breathes, a strength that accepts life's limits, that welcomes change, that smiles at uncertainty. To wake each morning without the weight of comparison, to act without needing applause, to love without the fear of loss, to live quietly, honestly, simply, and call that enough. This is the freedom Montaigne left us, not a rebellion of noise, but a rebellion of stillness, a wisdom that whispers instead of shouts, a courage that lies not in domination, but in surrender. He proved centuries before psychology or philosophy could name it, that peace is not the absence of challenge, it's the absence of resistance. And if you listen closely, his voice still echoes through time saying, let go, breathe, be. Because the moment you stop caring about how the world sees you, the world finally begins to reveal itself. Not as something to conquer, but as something to belong to. That is the art of not caring. That is the quiet freedom to be.